Welcome to the Nest Podcast, your home for nerd entertainment and sports talk, where your hosts, Brandon and Zach, hash out what's happening in video games and sports every week. Enjoy the show!
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to a special episode of the Nest Podcast. This is a special Friday episode, and Zach and I decided that we needed to come on here and get some things off of our chest because a lot has been going on in the world of baseball. And as a lot of you know, we are hardcore baseball fans, and we are stoked for baseball season to start. But before we get into any of that, we need to talk about something a little heavier, a little more serious. Then we'll get into it. Last night, a lot of you will remember on Sportszilla, I shared a live stream of some boxing matches that were happening in Nashville, Tennessee. One of the fighters from Johnson City, Tennessee, Roy King Jr., was in the co-main event of that night. He suffered a loss, 8-round decision loss, and then immediately collapsed and was rushed to the hospital there in Nashville, Tennessee. At the time of this recording, Roy is still in critical care and is, I believe, still listed as in a coma. Please keep Roy in your thoughts, prayers, any of that stuff that you guys do. And man, that's a bad way to start the weekend, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I did see that his family set up a GoFundMe because obviously the expenses of this hospital stay are going to be astronomical. So if you can share it, let other people know about it. If you have the funds available, chip in $5, $10, $15, whatever you can. I'm sure the family would greatly appreciate it. As is, they've already traveled from Johnson City to Nashville, and they'll be staying there with Roy as long as possible, as long as it takes. So they could use any bit of love and support that we could give them right now. I've shared it out on my personal Facebook page. I'll share it again on the Nest Facebook page as well. So if you're not friends with me, you can still go and find it at Nest Podcast on Facebook. And yeah, just let as many people as you know find out about it, because this fighter is now literally in the fight for his life, and it sucks. So, but Zach, Major League Baseball is up to some Major League bullshit.
Yep.
I guess the most fitting place to start with all of this is at the beginning, and that's with the 2017 Houston Astros. We've already covered that quite a bit throughout the past few weeks, but just to give a synopsis, 2017 Astros were accused of stealing signs by installing closed circuit television in their stadium with cameras in center field that had TV monitors in or around the dugout so that they could, see what the catchers were putting down. And then now it's being reported that there was even like strips of vibrating tapes or whatever that were on the player's person and would alert to them with think about like your phone, and when it vibrates, as the kind of vibration that they would have on this little strip. And then they also had the trash cans and all that stuff. So MLB investigated. They came out and found that a lot of this stuff is true. They found out that pretty much all of the cheating and all that stuff was going on, and they acted and suspended AJ Hinch and the Astros general manager, Jeff Lewin or whatever. And they fined the Astros $5 million, which I found out is the max that MLB is allowed to fine an organization. I thought that was just a weird like slap on the wrist number, but apparently it's in the rules that that's the max that they can fine them monetarily. And then they also took away a first and a second round draft pick in the 2020 and the 2021 MLB draft. So that's the punishment the Astros got. Moments later, team president came out, issued a statement that general manager Lewin and on-field manager AJ Hinch were both fired, effective immediately. And that prompted this circus that we have now, to where Alex Cora, who was the bench coach of the Astros in 2017 and was named 11 times in the 9-page report from MLB, who went on, of course, famously to manage the Red Sox in their 2018 World Series championship run. And now he is fired, relieved of all duties. He wasn't fired. They mutually terminated his contract or whatever. Basically, they set him down and said, look, you can either walk away mutually or we're going to can your ass. And he chose the one that's more face saving. I don't blame him. So he's gone. And then the Mets kind of shocked the world when they announced that Adrian Beltran Carlos Beltran, I'm sorry, is not going to be their manager going forward. And the thing about that is he was just hired
months ago,
like yesterday, to be their GM. So he hasn't even, or manager, he hasn't even managed a single game for the Mets, and he's already out the door. And they're talking about David Wright might come and replace him, which was a player for the Mets 2 years ago and then retired. And so who knows what's going to happen there. That kind of brings us to where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
So far, players haven't been punished on any part of this, except for Beltran, because he was a player on the 2017 Astros team, then retired after that season, worked for the Yankees in 2018. Scratch that. In 2019, he worked for the Yankees. And then after that season is when he got hired in the Mets. I don't know, man. All of this stuff is just coming at me, and it's really got me like to where I don't know what to think going forward. All Red Sox Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff has been talking nothing about or talking about anything but who's going to replace Cora. They're looking at Jason Varitek, a guy that was the catcher for the organization for several years. He was the captain of the team. He was a real integral cog to that organization for many, many years. And then he retired as a player, and he helps out a little bit in spring training and all that stuff. But then he goes back to his life. He hasn't been with a full major league season since he played. And everybody seems to think that he's the best fit for the new Red Sox manager. I don't personally think that he is, because he has zero big league experience. And one of the things that I've been really championing with all this is that they need to just get an interim guy. You need to bring in somebody quickly, because we're less than a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting. So they need to bring in somebody quickly as an interim coach, much like the Cardinals did with Mike Shildt whenever they got rid of Matheny. Yeah. So they need to hire somebody as an interim. Dusty Baker's still out there. Buck Showalter's out there. Bring in one of these guys that have experience managing a big league club on an interim basis. If they do well, cool, give them the job. If they don't, that gives new general manager for the Red Sox, Chaim Bloom, the opportunity to have more time to pick his guy.
I have a perfect fit, unless he's still with the Dodgers, Dave Roberts.
He is still with the Dodgers,
Okay.
which it's funny that you mentioned that. Out of the past 3 World Series, there have been obviously 4 different teams to play in it. The Dodgers played, and then you have the Nationals that just won, and you have the Red Sox and the Astros. Only 2 of those managers are still coaching their teams.
Right.
Dave Roberts, who lost 2 World Series still there in LA, and then your boy in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess if LA is still holding on to Roberts, they don't plan on canning him this year. So I guess
no, they've already came out and announced he's good to go in his job. He'll be there until probably the cows come home.
Yep.
What do you make of all of this stuff going on?
I think we're maybe weeks away from some players getting some disciplinary action. With all this stuff that we've recently seen with Altuve, with the whole, whatever you want to call it, attached to his body, that's almost definitive evidence, at least in my mind. So it might take them a while to do their own investigation or whatever. I don't know if they've been investigating players or not, but something's coming soon, I think. As a whole, this is a terrible look. And I think for MLB, I would have expected more stringent punishments. A year suspension for these two members of the Astros club isn't enough, in my opinion. And Alex Cora hasn't been punished yet. Beltran hasn't been punished yet. They've just been fired by their own teams, but they're perfectly capable of being picked up by another team unless they get a suspension or something like that. But they should have rolled out something much larger for the 2017 Astros, I think. I mean, if it's definitive that this was going on, it rolls more deep than the manager and general manager, in my opinion.
Jim Crane, the owner of the Astros, I think was given they kind of did him a favor. And instead of MLB saying, hey, your manager and general manager are shit canned, I think they gave him the pat on the back to be like, okay, you can do that to save face for your organization so that you can go out there and be like, look, we're not going to deal with this kind of crap. You're out of here. So it makes you look like you're a responsible and, an owner that wants to see things done right.
Yep.
Whether that was true or not, who knows? It's hard to say whether Jim Crane would have known that this was going on anyway. I don't know much about their owner and how involved he is. I know in Boston, John Henry and Tom Warner and all those guys that that are the front office, the principal owners and all that stuff. They really don't have much to do with the day-to-day baseball operations. That's what your GM and your manager are for. Mm-hmm. They're the subject matter experts. You just happen to have the deep pockets.
Yep. I think that's the case for most organizations. The owner is the benefactor. They write the checks, and they might know a little bit about baseball, and they might have decisions for players that they sign and contracts that they sign. But other than that, you're right. Damn near every organization, in my opinion, day-to-day is ran by the general manager and the manager and all the other coaches.
Yep, absolutely. And to that point, I don't know that Crane would have had knowledge of what was going on with all this. So I'm okay with him being able to come out and shit can these guys and say, hey, we're not going to deal with this on our team. Go ahead and get out. But the one person from that Astros organization that I've been waiting to say something, but he hasn't yet, is Justin Verlander. That guy has been insanely outspoken against cheaters and cheating and anything that's perceived to be against the rules of baseball for as long as I can remember. Yeah, you mentioned it, the juiced balls. Like, he's raised the biggest stink of any player out there about the juiced baseballs. Maybe he was trying to subtly alert MLB that there was some shady shit going on and maybe they should do some investigation. And maybe the juice ball was just his way to be able to say that without really snitching on his own team. But he needs to come out and say something about what's been going on his own team. Because prior to being traded to Houston in 2017, he spoke extensively about teams using technology to steal signs. Like it was almost like, okay, Justin Verlander, your ERA's up, you're starting to slump as a pitcher. You're not the ace you used to be. Now you're starting to bitch and moan about everybody cheating you. And then all of a sudden you're in Houston and you're winning a World Series and you don't really care about that anymore.
Yep. It's all very too convenient. And I think if he ever tries to pull the I never knew about it, that I wasn't informed of that, I call bullshit, because as a starting pitcher, if it's your off day, if you pitched yesterday, all you're doing all game is sitting in the dugout. And you can't tell me he wouldn't be able to pick up 2 bangs on a trash can, 1 bang on a trash can. Like that would get to you after 9 innings of just sitting there bullshitting. So there's no way he didn't know this was going on. He might have just played dumb and not really asked questions, but he knew what was going on. Absolutely. I think that whole organization knew what was going on. If you sat in the dugout, you knew what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm watching our comments rolling in, and the boys from Locker Room Talk are just blowing up the comment section with a bunch of tomfoolery. But Wallow said something pretty funny. He said the ball should have been investigated by USADA. You know, they can discover picograms of difference in anything. So that would have been a pretty good call there, Wallow.
Right.
Something else Wallow said is let them replay the 2017 World Series in the offseason. That obviously can't happen. I'm sure he's just saying that as a joke, but players have come and gone since then. Many of the players that were on the 2017 Astros team no longer play there. And that's what really prompted everything. Is there is a pitcher by the name of Mike Fears, and our listeners might remember we mentioned him briefly last season because he threw a no-hitter in Oakland. Mm-hmm. He was the whistleblower of all this, and he was like, look, I was on the 2017 Astros team. We were fucking cheating, yo. And that's what started this whole snowball. So they wouldn't be able to go back and play it because that guy would probably get crucified if he stepped foot back on the Astros field, which he will do in, I believe it was like April 25th. I texted you and said that's the date that he returns to Houston as a member of the Oakland A's. So that's going to be must-see TV because I'm going to go ahead and call it. The Houston Astro fans are going to be throwing stuff at him because now, because of him, their one lone championship in franchise history is tainted.
Absolutely. Yeah, they will just boo till the cows come home when he's there for sure. He's lucky he doesn't have to bat, because if he were to try to bat there, they would, oh my God.
Oh yeah, he would get beamed for sure.
Yep.
Wallow again said, we call people in the streets, we call those guys snitches, and we all know what snitches get. But I don't get what MLB is going to do going forward. They said in 2017 when the Red Sox and the Yankees were caught using the Apple Watches to aid in stealing signs or whatever, they said then that if it ever happened again, they were going to levy severe punishments and all that stuff. And they also said something in a smaller statement that the players wouldn't be punished for using those devices. It would be the manager and general manager, which is what they did with the Astros. Hinch and their GM were let go. But at some point, you've got to hold these players accountable.
I agree.
Hinch tried to pull the whole like, oh, well, I was against it the whole time. It was Cora that was insistent on all this stuff. I even sabotaged the monitors in our dugout, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. You are the manager of this team. If you wanted it stopped, you would have had it stopped. That's all there is to it. You didn't do enough. That's why you're out of the job. Alex Cora probably was the leader of everything, and him and Beltran apparently were the masterminds behind it all, according to the report that the MLB came out that had heavily influenced by Astros front office personnel. But those two have been painted as the ringleaders of the group, and they're both out of a job now because of this shit too. You mentioned Altuve. Altuve had probably one of the most damning pieces of evidence for using the electronic buzzers. After he cranked a walk-off homer against Aroldis Chapman in Game 7 of the ALCS, he was rounding the bases and held his shirt together with both hands and was yelling, "Don't rip off my shirt."
Mm-hmm.
He was asked about it later, and he laughed, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm just a little shy. Last time that happened to me, my wife got mad."
Mm-hmm.
Bullshit.
Yep.
Like you said earlier, Zach, any dude that's remotely in shape doesn't care one bit about being seen without a shirt on.
No.
And especially if you're ripped. If you're buff, then it's like, oh, yeah, let me show off this six-pack. Shit, I've got a dad bod, and I don't mind being without a shirt.
And I don't buy the whole shy thing either. You're a celebrity baseball player. There's no way you're shy. And also, that same instance, he immediately ran to the dugout to put on the ALCS champions T-shirt or whatever it might have been.
Not only did he do that, he took off his jersey and whatever was underneath that jersey before he threw on the regular T-shirt.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely that's cold hard evidence in my book. I don't know.
Let's really paint the picture on this one. You're the guy that just hit the walk-off home run to send your team to the World Series. Everybody on your team is dogpiling on the mound and jumping up and down, celebrating with the confetti and all that stuff. And you, the guy that hit the home run to win the game, you're going to duck out and go to the dugout?
Yeah.
I could understand it if it was like Garrett Cole that was like, all right, well, I wasn't even in the game when this happened. I'm going to go down here and pop the champagne early and, get my buzz on. Mm-hmm. But no, it was the guy that everyone was celebrating at that moment that slipped away. Yeah. That's suspicious.
Absolutely. He should be at the bottom of a dog pile, like you said. Like, he shouldn't even have the ability physically to get to the dugout because his teammates are mauling him. He just won the game for him. So that's immediately a giant red flag.
So do you think that players should be getting caught up in this and individual players being suspended or banned or whatever? Because that's another whole thing that's kind of egregious about all this is you can cheat to win a World Series and you only get a year suspension. But if you bet on a regular season game, you get banned for life.
Yep. You can take a steroid and be banned for life and not make it in the Hall of Fame. And
no, that's not even true because the guys that were on steroids, they weren't banned. They're not banned from the Hall of Fame. They just haven't been voted in.
Just been kind of blackballed.
They got blackballed or blacklisted rather, but they're not banned. Like A-Rod, the 2009 Yankees won the World Series. A-Rod was suspended for like 81 games that year due to steroids. He still got to play in the World Series. Mm-hmm. Is that World Series tainted because you had a guy that served, a suspension for steroid abuse during that same season?
Right. So you can do all that stuff and receive a punishment, but the quote unquote biggest scandal in MLB cheating history has just been proven to be true, and not a single player has had any kind of disciplinary action taken on them as of yet. I mean, immediately, if I were the commissioner, that entire team, if any active players from that team were still in an active roster, they would get some sort of punishment. I mean, I don't know what is fair. I don't know if a lifetime ban is fair or just some sort of suspension for a few years. I don't know what that might be, but something. I mean, immediately something. If you're gonna suspend the GM and the manager, then it trickles down from there. You know what I mean?
I disagree with you on the grounds that a lot of the players that were on that team are no longer on the Astros. So you mean to tell me if these guys that had knowledge of it or whatever should be suspended, then that means Yankees pitcher Garrett Cole won't be able to play for the Yankees this year.
Yeah.
That means Oakland pitcher Mike Fears won't be able to play this year. That means Grandel, who was the catcher of that team, who now plays for Minnesota, won't be able to play this year. You see what I'm getting at? You're hurting other teams.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with it. That's
exactly. But there has been some chatter around the league. Some of the other players chiming in as to what they think should be happening, and some of those players think that suspensions and all that stuff should be.
Mm-hmm. Alex
Wood, he said that he would rather face a guy that has steroids than face pitchers that know what's coming. I agree with that. Mike Clevenger, Sunshine, he said, all right, well, if you guys are going to know what's coming at you, I'm just going to rear back and throw as hard as I can and hit you with it. Fuck it. He's ready to fight about it.
Yep.
But some of the guys were saying, this is a joke. The fact that if it's 100% true, the World Series in 2017 should be stripped, and as is all the individual awards. He's basically saying that to Altuve. Mm-hmm. Like, your World Series title should be stripped and your MVP should be stripped. Trevor Bauer comes out with his own shirt that has the Houston with a Band-Aid on it and stuff like that. But Cody Bellinger, National League MVP, said, for the sake of the game, I hope this isn't true. If it's true, there needs to be major consequences to the players.
Yep, I agree with that, because let's say your take on it is true and a guy does something in a team, dips out, and he's at another team. You can't ban him because that fucks over his new team that had nothing to do with it. If guys know that's the case and they can get away with it for a year and dip out, what's going to stop that from happening? Maybe some sort of I don't know, because I was going to say monetary, but these guys make so much money, especially the high-level guys. They don't give a shit. So I don't know what you can do, honestly.
I don't think you can do anything. I think the Players Association would step in. There's just too much. These players are in a union and all that stuff. And if you started suspending these players, especially ones that were on other teams now, we would have another strike on our hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw something in the comments earlier. I think it was Wallow again said, just strip the 2017 title. They didn't have a champion declared in 94, but that season was shortened. They didn't play a World Series in 1994 because of the strike. They actually played out the 2017 World Series, so you can't just strip that away.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. I don't think they'll vacate it. I think it'll be left as is, and I think pretty much the bulk of the punishment has been dished out on this case from MLB. Next, we'll find out what's in store for the Boston Red Sox, because that's being investigated now. Mm-hmm. What did Alex Cora bring from Houston to Boston to help assist the 2018 World Series team?
Yep.
The only real fortunate thing out of all of this is that in the original report by Evan Drellick, it clearly stated that there is no way that the Red Sox were able to use the replay room during the postseason because MLB had officials posted in both replay rooms. So they know definitively that the Red Sox didn't cheat in October when it really matters, and they still only lost 3 games in the postseason. So they still steamrolled the Yankees, the Astros, and the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm. So at least that saves that year's World Series.
That at least the World Series championship isn't in question. The regular season, that's up to anybody's guess.
Right.
But initial reports or initial findings or whatever from MLB have suggested that they're not really finding much in the way of cheating. Nothing at all compared to what happened in Houston. We've said it before, that's a completely different issue. That's like comparing apples and oranges here.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's a crazy deal. And the one big weird piece of video evidence about Alex Cora was the one that you shared with me. Alex Cora was interviewed after the Red Sox got swept in London by the Yankees, and the question was basically, how did they do that or whatever? And he kind of explains it for a little bit, and then he goes off on a weird tangent about Carlos Beltran, and he mentions devices, and he mentions a bunch of other weird stuff, unprovoked, and that was very strange to watch.
Yeah. At one point, he even said the biggest free agent acquisition that the Yankees made in the offseason was signing Carlos Beltran.
Wink.
He literally winked at the camera as he said that. And he said, I know the guy. I know how he works. I know what they're doing. I'm not saying they're using devices, but I know what it is that's going on. So he was basically saying in July, other teams are stealing signs. We know about it. They know about it. Everybody knows about it. But we're just going to keep on handling our business.
Yeah, that's insane.
Chris suggested that they take some draft picks and ban them from the postseason for 3 years. Chris, they did take draft picks. They took a first-round draft pick from 2020 and a first-round draft pick 2020 and 2021 and a second-round draft pick in 2020 and 2021. So that's, 4 top picks. And I was thinking about that too. They're fined $5 million. They have to come off top and pay $5 million or whatever. They generally pick later in the rounds because they're usually one of the better teams and all that stuff. So where they would normally pick the average salaries that they would be paying for these guys is around like 1.5 to 750,000, 1.5 million to 755,000 for their annual salaries. So if you add up those 4 draft picks, it's still only about $5 million. So they're not really they're not really losing out on a lot of money. It's just basically being reallocated somewhere else.
Yep. And plus, these draft picks aren't really going to affect the Astros for about 5 or 6 years or so, because those draft picks would be in the farm system for a few years anyway.
Right. That's not going to make an immediate impact on the major league team. Hell, most of these guys probably won't even make it to the show or will get traded somewhere else before then anyway. Yep. Oh, yeah, and by the way, guess what? There's a loophole so the Astros can still get first-round picks. It's called they have guys that are about to reach free agency. All they have to do is extend them a qualifying offer and then let the guy walk in free agency to go somewhere else. And guess what? They get a pick rewarded back to them. So they're still going to end up with first round picks. So that, we talked about MLB, ruling with their plastic gavel on our last episode. It's so laughable at this punishment, especially since they came out and like, it's going to be the most severe of all time.
Yeah. And it's basically standard. It's like a year suspension. Ooh, ouch. Know?
And so, every fan base out there, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're like, no, not me. I respect the game too much, blah, blah, blah. Every fan out there would trade a year suspension for their general manager and their manager if it guaranteed that they were winning the World Series the year before.
Yeah. Yeah. No question there. So maybe since this punishment for the Astros wasn't that severe, maybe they won't punish players.
I don't think they will. Like I said earlier, if they start punishing players, it's going to have more of a ripple effect across the sport, and I guarantee it's going to lead to a strike.
So they're just going to basically get away with this. Like, we won our World Series, you caught us, now the gig is up, and that's over with. Now we play some other game. We try to find some other scheme.
Yep, that's it. They'll try to find another way to get a competitive advantage, because stealing signs and trying to get one over on your opponent has always been a thing in baseball. Mm-hmm. It's always been a thing in most sports. If you can get any kind of advantage over anybody, you're going to take it.
Yep.
So, it is what it is. I just hate that the Red Sox have been drawn into this, and the Mets as well, because both of those teams have a real shaky start to their season now because of the fallout from the Houston Astros.
Yeah. Their whole game plan has been flipped upside down now. And like you said, we're less than a month away from pitchers and catchers. And you're going to have to find some manager, and he's going to have to try to scramble together some sort of plan. And, it's too late in the postseason for this to all work well. So the first half of the regular season is going to be rough, I think.
Yep, I agree. I as a Red Sox fan, I'm not expecting a really promising season. I'm going into this season with the same expectations I had in 2012 when Bobby Valentine was going to be the manager. I knew that was going to be a disaster. I knew Carl Crawford wasn't going to pan out with the Red Sox, and I had the gut feeling that was going to suck.
Mm-hmm.
And it did. They were a last place team. So not looking good for Red Sox fans, but you know what? The Cardinals have an exciting team, so I'll probably watch a lot of them, especially if they land Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, that'll be monumental to say the least.
But I don't think it'll happen. They're asking for Flaherty, and I don't think the Cards are going to give up a young, promising pitcher.
They're asking for the world, and it's only for 2 years of Nolan. So
right, because he has an opt-out.
Yeah, that's way too much to ask for. I mean, he's great, but I don't think he'll land with the Cardinals. Speaking of the Cardinals, did you see that? I can't remember his name, but some pitcher from the 80s White Sox accused Tony La Russa of using cameras to steal signs back in the 80s.
Yeah, I did see that. Said something about there was an intricate system that they had the lights in a Gatorade sign in center field that would light up accordingly to what pitch was coming. That's pretty ingenious for 80s technology to be able to flip a switch and be like, all right, if you see the G in Gatorade lit up, you know it's going to be a fastball because the G stands for gas or whatever the case was. I don't know the specifics, but yeah, I did see that. And it's kind of funny. It's like, dude, that was in the 80s. Like, they didn't even win the World Series that year, and you're snitching on them now? That's a little bit weird.
Another thing that's weird about that is I wish I could remember the damn pitcher's name, but that pitcher was never managed by La Russa. La Russa left the year before that player played for the White Sox. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not true, but it's just another weird thing in that whole story.
Yeah, it's like, where on this doll did La Russa touch you?
Yeah.
I swear, like all these snitches coming out, it's Me Too for baseball. That's all this is right now.
Exactly.
Oh, well. I'm glad we came on tonight. We got a little bit out of the way because we know Monday's episode is going to be jam-packed with a lot of other stuff. We started tonight talking about Roy King. Justin is actually visiting Roy in Nashville right now, and we should be able to get a good update on Monday, and hopefully it's a good one and something that we can all kind of celebrate. But he'll be back on Monday with us, and we'll break down the AFC and NFC championship games. Pretty stoked on some football this weekend, and we also have the big UFC 246 that we'll be talking about, and whatever nonsense happens in the world of baseball between now and then. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Thanks for blowing up the comments. Appreciate that a lot, and we'll see ya.
Stay connected with Brandon and Zach on Facebook and Instagram at The Nest Podcast, and tune in next week for a brand new episode. And thanks for listening.